My name is Anna Marie. I'm 27 years old and I spent 5 years building a music production studio worth $200,000. I once thought my siblings were my biggest supporters. Then I came home early from a business trip to find my brother Jake and his friends destroying everything with sledgehammers while my sister Natalie filmed it all for social media. When I tried to stop them, Jake punched me in the face. I lost everything that day, but what came next would change all our lives forever. If you're watching this video right now, let me know where you're tuning in from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this story ends. Music has been my passion since I was 8 years old. My parents bought me a cheap keyboard for Christmas, and I would spend hours creating little melodies and recording them on my dad's old tape recorder. As I grew older, my passion for music only intensified. I wasn't interested in being a performer, though. What fascinated me was the production side. How sounds came together to create something magical. I worked hard through high school, taking extra music theory classes and learning everything I could about audio engineering. When it came time for college, I got accepted into a prestigious sound engineering program in Los Angeles. My parents couldn't afford much financial support, so I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. I'd work as a barista from 5 a.m. to 9, attend classes until 4, then bartend or work as a live sound tech for local bands until 2 o'clock in the morning. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. After graduation, I started at the bottom, getting coffee and cleaning studios for minimum wage, but I was determined. I observed everything, asked questions, and practiced whenever producers would let me touch the equipment. Eventually, I got my first assistant producer credit on a small indie album that unexpectedly charted. That was my break. Over the next 4 years, I worked with increasingly notable artists. I lived on ramen noodles and saved every penny. My dream wasn't just to be a producer. I wanted my own studio, not a rented space, but something that was truly mine, where I could develop my unique sound without time constraints. When I turned 25, I purchased a small house in the suburbs with a detached garage, perfect for conversion. The mortgage stretched me thin, but I was determined. I spent another year soundproofing, installing acoustic treatments, and slowly acquiring equipment. Some pieces I bought new, but many were vintage finds I restored myself, staying up until dawn repairing old analog gear that had the warm sound I loved. By last year, my studio was finally complete. A perfect blend of digital precision and analog warmth. I had a rare Neve mixing console I'd found in pieces and restored over 6 months. My microphone collection included handmade tube condenser mics that captured vocals in a way digital simply couldn't match. The drum room had perfect acoustics that drummers would book just to record basic tracks. It wasn't just equipment. It was a carefully crafted environment where creativity flourished. 3 platinum records had been produced there. Artists would specifically request my studio because of the unique sound we achieved. Just 2 months ago, I'd invested another $80,000 in rare analog equipment that completed my vision. The studio wasn't just my livelihood. It was my heart and soul in physical form. Every cable, every knob, every acoustic panel represented countless hours of work and sacrifice. Growing up, our parents were physically present but emotionally absent. Dad worked 60-hour weeks as an insurance adjuster, while Mom threw herself into community volunteer work. They provided for our needs, but were rarely available for our problems. This created a tight bond between me, Jake, and Natalie. As the oldest, I became their de facto parent, helping with homework, attending their school events, and being their emotional support. Jake is 2 years younger than me. He also loved music, but lacked the discipline to master an instrument or the patience to learn production. He'd start bands that would fall apart after a few months when he'd clash with other members. He'd blame everyone but himself for his failures. Still, I supported him, lending him money for instruments, connecting him with industry people, even letting his bands record demos in my studio for free. Natalie, the baby at 23, grew up in the social media age. From her teens, she was obsessed with becoming an influencer. She'd constantly film everything trying to find her niche. She'd jump from beauty tutorials to prank videos to reaction content, never sticking with anything long enough to build a following. She borrowed thousands from me for cameras, lighting, and editing software, promising to pay me back when she made it big. I noticed concerning changes in both of them over the past year. Jake's jealousy of my success became harder to hide. He'd make cutting remarks about how I got lucky or how the industry was rigged in favor of female producers. When artists I'd worked with won awards, he wouldn't congratulate me, but would point out flaws in their performances. Natalie's content took a darker turn as her subscriber count plateaued. She started filming revenge videos, elaborate setups to humiliate people who had supposedly wronged her. When I expressed concern, she dismissed it as just contempt, and claimed it was all staged, though I had my doubts. Despite these red flags, I continued supporting them. I paid Jake's rent twice when his band gigs fell through. I bought Natalie a $4,000 camera system when she claimed it would be her big break. I invited them to industry events, introduced them to contacts, and always defended them to colleagues who questioned their behavior. They were my siblings after all. I believed that my success would eventually become our success. I thought that by lifting them up, they would find their own paths and the petty jealousies would fade. I couldn't have been more wrong. The week of the incident should have been one of the happiest of my professional life. After years of building my reputation, I had scheduled sessions with an artist who had dominated the charts for the past decade. Working with her wasn't just prestigious. It was practically a guarantee of future high-profile projects. We had been in preliminary talks for months, and she had specifically requested my studio after hearing about the unique analog sound I was known for. The day before everything happened, I was finalizing preparations for her arrival. The following week, I had ordered specific vintage microphone tubes that complemented her vocal range, recalibrated the console to optimize it for her style, and was preparing reference tracks to help guide our sessions. This project could potentially double my income for the year and open doors I'd only dreamed about. That same morning, Jake called. This wasn't unusual. He often called, asking for favors or money. This time he explained that his newest band had a guaranteed breakthrough opportunity. All they needed was $7,000 for a music video that would surely go viral. His voice had that familiar desperate excitement I'd heard many times before. Annie, this is different from the other times he insisted using the nickname. Only he called me. We've got interest from actual industry people, real players. This video is the final piece we need. For the first time, I refused. Not because I didn't have the money, but because I recognized the pattern. Jake, I've invested over $20,000 in your various projects over the last 3 years. I haven't seen any return, not even a thank you most times. I think you need to find another way. His tone instantly changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by a cold edge I'd heard increasingly often. Oh, so you're too good for us now, getting cozy with the stars and forgetting where you came from. That's not fair, I replied. I've supported you consistently. I just can't keep funding projects that go nowhere. You know what's not fair, he snapped. You stumbling into success while real musicians like me get overlooked. Maybe if I exploited being a woman in the industry like you do, I'd have my own studio, too. The comment stung, but I'd heard similar jabs before. What worried me was the undercurrent of genuine hatred in his voice. After more bitter words, he hung up abruptly. I tried calling back, but he didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Natalie came by the studio unannounced. She was filming as usual, her phone on a gimbal as she narrated her entrance, visiting my super famous producer sister at her fancy studio, she said with a forced brightness that didn't reach her eyes. I was in the middle of critical work, but I took a break to talk with her. She spent 30 minutes filming various angles of the equipment, asking me to explain what different knobs and sliders did. I obliged, thinking she might be creating educational content for once. As she was leaving, she mentioned casually, "My numbers are way down this month. The algorithm hates me," she sighed dramatically. The only stuff getting traction these days is extreme content, destruction videos, major pranks, real emotional reactions. Please don't go down that road, I said. Create something meaningful instead. Quality content will find its audience. She rolled her eyes. Says the person who already made it. You don't understand the pressure creators are under now. Before leaving, she asked oddly specific questions about my schedule for the next day. I told her I had an early flight to San Diego to meet with the artist's management team, and wouldn't be back until the following evening. That night, I received a strange call from Marcus, a session drummer I'd worked with frequently. Just wanted to give you a heads up, he said hesitantly. I ran into Jake at the Soundhouse bar. He was drunk talking loudly about how you've built your career stealing his ideas and how things were going to change soon. Probably nothing, but thought you should know. This unsettled me enough that I decided to change my plans. Instead of staying overnight in San Diego as originally planned, I would return immediately after the meeting. I didn't tell anyone about this change, not even my assistant. Something felt off and my intuition was screaming at me to get home. The meeting in San Diego went well, but I was distracted throughout. As soon as it concluded at 3:00 p.m., I made excuses to avoid the dinner they had planned and drove straight back to Los Angeles. During the 2-hour drive, I tried calling both Jake and Natalie multiple times, but neither answered. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the knot in my stomach only tightened as I got closer to home. I had left a spare key with my neighbor Carol in case of emergencies. When I stopped by to retrieve it, she mentioned something odd. Your brother came by yesterday asking for the key. Said you told him to pick it up. I didn't give it to him since you hadn't mentioned anything to me. My brother had tried to get my house key under false pretenses. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. I thanked Carol and rushed the final few steps home, already dreading what I might find. As I turned onto my street just after 6 p.m., my heart dropped. There were 5 unfamiliar cars parked haphazardly in my driveway and along the curb in front of my house. The largest was a black van with a faded logo for Thunder Road Equipment, a rental company that supplied gear for bands and events. Even from inside my car, I could hear muffled thumping and crashing sounds coming from the direction of my studio. I parked across the street, hands shaking so badly, I dropped my keys twice before making it out of the car. The front door of my house was unlocked, which I never leave it. As I pushed it open, the sounds became clearer. Splintering wood, shattering glass, and underneath it all laughter. Male voices were shouting encouragement, and I could hear Natalie's distinctive voice giving directions like a film director. I ran through the house and out the back door. The path to the detached garage studio was lined with empty beer cans and bottles. The studio door was wide open, pulsing colored lights spilling out. My professional lighting system that I used for video sessions, now apparently repurposed. What I saw next will be burned into my memory forever. Jake stood in the center of my control room, sledgehammer raised above his head. He wore one of my platinum record plaques around his neck like an obscene medallion, the broken frame dangling from a guitar strap. Around him, 5 of his friends, faces flushed with alcohol and excitement, were methodically destroying everything in sight. One was jumping on my knee console, the irreplaceable vintage heart of my studio, which was already half shattered. Another swung a baseball bat at my microphone collection, the delicate instruments exploding into shards of metal and glass. 2 others were tearing down the acoustic panels I had painstakingly installed, revealing the soundproofing beneath which they were also ripping out in chunks. The last was pouring beer into my computer workstations and storage drives that contained years of project files. And there in the doorway stood Natalie, professional camera in hand, filming everything with a look of intense concentration. She had set up additional cameras on tripods to capture multiple angles. She wore a director's headset and was shouting instructions. "Jake, look more angry. Smash it harder. Guys, spread out so I can see all the destruction." For a moment, I stood frozen in disbelief. This couldn't be real. My life's work was being systematically destroyed before my eyes by the people I loved most in the world. The equipment, the space I had created, note by note, dollar by painstaking dollar, TST, all being reduced to rubble for what? A video. "Stop." I finally screamed, finding my voice. "What are you doing?" Everyone turned toward me, expressions ranging from surprise to amusement to, in Jake's case, a dark satisfaction. Well, Jake said, lowering the sledgehammer to rest on his shoulder. "Look who's home early. Natalie, make sure you get this. It's the money shot." Natalie swung the camera toward me, her face invisible behind the viewfinder. "Perfect. Annie, can you look more shocked? This reaction is gold. Turn that off and get out." I screamed, moving toward the nearest guy to physically stop him from continuing to destroy my mixing board. "Are you all insane? Do you have any idea what you're destroying?" Jake stepped between us. "We know exactly what we're destroying. Your precious little empire built on my talent and ideas." His breath reeked of whiskey, but his eyes were clear with purpose. "This wasn't a drunken impulse. This was planned. This is for Natalie's new channel," he continued with a smirk. "Revenge content going to get millions of views. Entitled music producer gets what she deserves. We're just giving your stuff the ending it was always headed for." I tried to push past him to stop his friend who was now targeting my rack of rare analog compressors. "Those are worth $50,000. Stop this right now." That's when Jake did something I never thought possible. As I moved past him, he turned and swung his fist directly into my face. The impact was explosive, sending me sprawling backward onto the floor. Pain bloomed across my cheek and eye as I tasted blood. "Keep rolling, Nat. This is even better," Jake shouted. Little Miss Perfect finally gets a reality check. Through my one eye that wasn't already swelling shut, I saw Natalie zoom in on my face as I lay there, blood trickling from my split lip, tears of pain and betrayal streaming down my cheeks. "Amazing reaction, Annie," she said from behind the camera. "The authenticity is exactly what my viewers want. Can you say something about how it feels to lose everything?" One of Jake's friends looked uncomfortable. "Dude, you said she wouldn't be home. This is messed up. I didn't sign up to hit women." "Shut up and keep smashing," Jake snapped. "We're almost done anyway." I tried to stand up, but the room was spinning. I crawled toward my phone that had fallen when Jake hit me, but one of his friends kicked it away, laughing. Through the haze of pain and shock, I heard a new voice. Carol, my neighbor, was standing at the door of the studio, her own phone held to her ear. "Police are on their way," she announced loudly. "I've been filming this whole thing from outside. You all better leave right now." At the mention of police, Jake's friends immediately started heading for the door. "This is assault and destruction of property," Carol continued. They'll be here in 2 minutes. Let's bounce, one guy said, dropping the bat he'd been using. This isn't worth jail time. Jake hesitated, looking around at the destruction with satisfaction before pointing at me. Remember this feeling, Annie? This is how it feels to have something you love taken away. Now we're even. As sirens became audible in the distance, Jake and his friends rushed out. Natalie lingered, getting final shots of the demolished studio and my bloodied face. This is going to be my biggest video ever, she said, almost to herself before following the others out. Carol helped me to my feet as the first police car pulled up outside. My studio, my dream, my livelihood, my security lay in ruins around me. Equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars destroyed beyond repair. Project files likely unsalvageable. The space itself would need to be completely rebuilt. But in that moment, what hurt infinitely more was the realization that my own siblings had orchestrated this destruction. This wasn't a random crime or a burglary gone wrong. This was a calculated act of hatred disguised as content creation. The responding officers were professional but clearly shocked by the scene. They took photographs, gathered initial statements, and called for medical assistance for my injuries. One officer helped me to a chair that had somehow survived the rampage. Do you know who did this? He asked, notepad ready. Through swollen lips, I answered with the most painful words I'd ever spoken. Yes, it was my brother and sister. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of pain, shock, and devastating revelations. After giving my statement to the police and receiving treatment for my injuries at the emergency room, a fractured orbital socket concussion, and 7 stitches in my lip, I returned to face the full reality of what had happened. The insurance adjuster arrived the next morning, walking through the wreckage with increasing dismay. His conclusion was devastating. I'm sorry, Miss Anna Marie, but your policy specifically excludes intentional damage caused by family members. If this had been random vandals, you'd be covered, but since you've identified your brother as the primary perpetrator, he left the sentence unfinished, but the message was clear. I was on my own. A sound equipment specialist I'd worked with came to assess what could be salvaged. His assessment was equally grim. The knee console is beyond repair. Those aren't made anymore and the circuit boards are completely smashed. Your microphone collection. He picked up fragments of metal and glass. These were handmade by artisans who are no longer alive. They're irreplaceable. The most methodical destruction had been reserved for my data storage. Not only had they poured liquids into the main systems, but they had also found and destroyed my backup drives. 5 years of project files, including works in progress for major clients, proprietary sound samples I'd created, and my personal music compositions, all gone. The specialist estimated the total replacement value at $230,000, not including the irreplaceable vintage pieces. That afternoon, still reeling from the physical damage, I discovered the digital attack. A friend texted me, "Have you seen what Natalie posted? Call me as soon as possible." With shaking hands, I opened social media to find Natalie had already edited and uploaded a 15-minute video titled "Exposing My Fraudster Sister Destroying the Studio She Built with Stolen Dreams." The thumbnail showed Jake mid-swing with the sledgehammer, my studio equipment flying apart in a shower of debris. It had 85,000 views already and was climbing rapidly. The video began with Natalie speaking directly to the camera. Today, I'm bringing you guys the truth about my so-called successful sister, the music producer who built her career, stealing songs from my talented brother, and refusing to help her family while she lives in luxury. What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. Natalie had edited together clips of the destruction, interspersed with interviews with Jake and his friends, all telling fabricated stories about how I had supposedly stolen Jake's original compositions, passed them off as my production work, and refused to give him credit or financial compensation. She promised to help me launch my career once she got established, Jake claimed in one segment, looking somber and betrayed. Instead, she took my demo tapes, used my hooks and beats with her big-name clients, and left me with nothing. This studio was built on my creativity. The comment section was flooded with outrage on their behalf. What a terrible sister. She deserves this. I always thought her music sounded like rip-offs. Justice served. Support Jake's band, everyone. Jake's band had linked their social profiles and their follower count was skyrocketing. Natalie's subscriber numbers had jumped by 20,000 overnight. They had successfully monetized my destruction. Most disturbing was the clip of me being punched, which Natalie had edited to make it appear I had attacked Jake first. The final moments showed me crying on the floor as Natalie narrated, "This is what happens when you betray family." Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can step on others on their way to the top. The video ended with a call to like, subscribe, and support real artists like Jake along with links to his band's fundraiser for a debut album. They had already raised $12,000. The betrayal extended beyond my siblings. When I called my parents, they had already seen the video and astonishingly seemed to believe Jake and Natalie's version. "We always wondered how you became successful so quickly." My mother said, "If you took advantage of your brother's talents, you need to make it right." My extended family members sent accusatory messages without bothering to hear my side. Cousins I'd been close to shared Natalie's video with comments about finally seeing the truth. Aunts and uncles I'd respected all my life were suddenly questioning my character and integrity. The professional fallout was equally swift. By the next morning, the management for the major artist I was scheduled to work with sent a TUR email. "In light of recent events and the ongoing family situation becoming public, we've decided to pursue other production options. We wish you well in resolving these matters." 3 other clients followed suit, canceling upcoming projects and requesting refunds for deposits. My phone stopped ringing. Email inquiries dried up. In a relationship-based industry like music production, reputation is everything, and mine was being systematically destroyed. My mortgage payment for the house and studio was due in 2 weeks. Without upcoming projects, I had perhaps 2 months of savings before financial catastrophe. Attorney fees were already mounting as I consulted with a lawyer about pressing charges. The road ahead looked impossible. That evening, alone in my damaged home, surrounded by the ruins of my dreams, I reached the lowest point of my life. The physical pain from Jake's assault was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of such complete betrayal. I sat in the dark, unable to even cry anymore, wondering if there was any point in trying to rebuild. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Saw the video. Know it's have info that might help. Call me Derek, Jake's ex-bandmate." It was a tiny spark in the darkness, but at that moment, it was enough to keep me going. The morning after receiving Derek's text, I woke up with a sense of clarity cutting through my despair. I had allowed myself one night of complete breakdown, but that was all I could afford. It was time to fight back. I called Derek, who revealed he had left Jake's band 6 months ago after discovering Jake stealing his equipment. "He's been planning something against you for months," Derek explained. "He'd get drunk and rant about how you owed him. Said he was going to reset the balance somehow." I thought it was just talk. Derek agreed to provide a sworn statement about Jake's premeditation and history of false claims. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Goldstein, an attorney specializing in digital crimes and defamation. Unlike the distracted lawyer I'd spoken with initially, Patricia immediately grasped the multidimensional nature of what had happened. "This isn't just property destruction," she said, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. "It's premeditated criminal damage, assault, defamation, business interference, and potentially fraud based on their fundraising under false pretenses. We need to approach this systematically." Patricia helped me file comprehensive police reports documenting every aspect of the attack. We submitted detailed inventories of the destroyed equipment complete with serial numbers, purchase dates, and current market values. We documented the project files lost and their potential commercial value. Most importantly, Patricia advised me not to respond publicly yet. "They want you to lash out emotionally," she explained. "That would just feed their narrative and create more content for them. We're going to be strategic and thorough, and when we move, it will be decisive." While the legal work progressed, I focused on securing my remaining assets. I moved temporarily into a friend's guest room, installed security cameras at my property, and changed all my passwords and account access information. I documented every threatening message from Jake and Natalie, every canceled contract, and every financial impact. A breakthrough came 3 days later. My cloud storage provider responded to Patricia's emergency request and confirmed that despite the physical destruction of my computers, automatic backups had continued running. Not only did we recover most of my project files, but we also discovered something crucial. Natalie had accidentally uploaded her raw unedited footage to my cloud account, likely because she had used my Wi-Fi during the destruction. The unedited footage was damning. It showed Jake and Natalie explicitly planning the attack, with Jake stating, "We'll tell everyone she stole my music. Nobody can prove otherwise, and the controversy will boost both our careers." It captured them coaching friends on what to say, rehearsing their shocked reactions, and most incriminatingly, Natalie instructing Jake to make sure you destroy all her backup drives so she can't prove the tracks are hers. The footage also included the full unedited assault, clearly showing Jake attacking me unprovoked, while Natalie encouraged him. "That's perfect. The victim becoming the villain will go viral." Patricia was ecstatic. "This is exactly what we needed. Their entire narrative falls apart with this footage." Further investigation of my email archives provided more ammunition. I found years of communications with Jake where he had thanked me for helping with his music, acknowledging that the production work was mine. I found texts from Natalie admitting she was desperate for views and would do anything for viral content. Most shocking was the discovery of emails between Natalie and a rival producer who had offered to help promote her channel if she would take down NMR a few notches. This wasn't just sibling jealousy. It was a coordinated attack with industry competitors. With mounting evidence in hand, Patricia implemented a multi-pronged strategy. First, we filed criminal charges against Jake for assault and destruction of property with the unedited video as primary evidence. Second, we submitted a comprehensive civil lawsuit against both Jake and Natalie for defamation, business interference, and emotional distress, seeking damages of $300,000. Third, we filed copyright strikes against Natalie's video for using my studio's proprietary design elements and sound samples that were audible in the background. This forced the temporary removal of the video while the platform investigated. Fourth, we contacted the fundraising platform where Jake had raised money under false pretenses, providing evidence that his claims of me stealing his music were fabricated. The platform froze the funds pending investigation. Throughout this process, I was rebuilding my professional network. I sent private messages to key industry contacts explaining the situation and providing proof of the manipulation. Most responded with shock and support. 3 producers I had previously collaborated with offered their studios for my ongoing projects, allowing me to fulfill my remaining obligations, despite having no functional workspace of my own. A technical expert documented exactly what had been destroyed and verified that the alleged stolen music productions contained techniques and signatures impossible for Jake to have created given his limited technical knowledge. A forensic audio analyst confirmed that Jake's supposed original demos that he had recently posted were actually created after my productions, not before. 2 weeks after the attack, we were ready for the counteroffensive. Patricia had assembled a case so thorough and damning that she was confident of success in both criminal and civil proceedings. The unedited footage, in particular, completely contradicted the narrative Jake and Natalie had constructed. They thought they were creating content, Patricia said with grim satisfaction. Instead, they were creating evidence. The night before our first court appearance, Jake called me clearly intoxicated. "You should drop all this, Annie," he slurred. "Nobody likes a snitch. We can say it was all a prank gone wrong. You're overreacting. I'll see you in court," I replied before hanging up. For the first time since the destruction, I slept soundly. The path forward would be difficult, but I was no longer helpless. I had the truth on my side, and soon everyone would see it. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but with devastating precision. Jake's arraignment on criminal charges came first. He appeared in court with a confidence that quickly evaporated when the prosecutor played portions of the unedited video showing the premeditation and assault. The judge denied his attorney's request for lenient bail conditions, citing the calculated nature of the crime and ongoing threatening communications. Jake spent 3 nights in county jail before his parents managed to post his $10,000 bail. His release came with strict conditions: no contact with me, regular check-ins with a probation officer, and an ankle monitor to ensure he stayed at least 500 feet from my property. His smug expression in his booking photo had been replaced by genuine fear in his release photos. Natalie initially tried to distance herself, claiming she was just filming and had no responsibility for the destruction. This strategy collapsed when our attorney presented her directing instructions from the unedited footage. "Make sure you destroy the backup drives first, so she can't recover anything." The social media platform permanently removed her revenge video and suspended her monetization privileges after reviewing our copyright claims and the evidence of staged defamation. Her follower count, which had spiked after the initial video, plummeted when news of the criminal charges spread. Former followers posted videos analyzing how she had manipulated the footage, creating a wave of backlash against her. Our civil case proceeded in parallel with the criminal proceedings. During depositions, Jake's friends cracked under questioning, admitting that Jake had promised them industry connections in exchange for helping with the destruction. 2 revealed that Jake had confessed to them that his claims about me stealing his music were fabricated to justify the attack. Natalie's deposition was particularly revealing. When confronted with her communications with my industry rival, she broke down, admitting, "I just wanted to be famous." He said, if I helped take down NMR, he'd feature me in his videos and introduce me to his network. I didn't think about the consequences. This admission led to an additional lawsuit against the rival producer, who quickly offered a settlement rather than face public exposure and potential industry blacklisting. 3 months after the attack, Jake's criminal trial concluded with a guilty verdict on all counts: felony destruction of property, assault, criminal conspiracy, and breaking and entering. The judge, clearly disturbed by the calculated nature of the crime against a family member, sentenced him to 18 months in state prison, 3 years of probation following release, and restitution payments totaling $150,000. As Jake was led away in handcuffs, The reality of his situation finally seemed to hit him. Gone was the arrogance, replaced by the terrified look of someone who had never considered he would face actual consequences for his actions. Natalie received a suspended sentence of 1 year 300 hours of community service and was included in the restitution order. The judge specifically required her community service to be performed at a women's shelter for victims of domestic violence, stating that she needed to develop empathy for those who experience genuine trauma rather than manufacturing it for views. The civil judgment came next and was equally decisive. The court awarded me $275,000 for equipment damages, business losses, medical expenses, and emotional distress. Additionally, the judge ordered both Jake and Natalie to post public retractions of their false claims on all social media platforms where they had spread misinformation. These retractions were perhaps the most satisfying part of the legal victory. Jake's statement, clearly written by his attorney, but required to be posted under his own name, read in part, "I acknowledge that all claims regarding NMRE stealing my music were completely fabricated. She never took any of my creative work or failed to credit me. The destruction of her studio was based entirely on my own jealousy and resentment of her legitimate success." Natalie's retraction was similarly comprehensive. "The video I created portraying my sister as a music thief was entirely false and manufactured for views. The evidence presented was fabricated and I deliberately edited footage to create a false narrative. I apologize for the harm caused by my actions. The professional consequences for them were swift and severe." Jake's band members publicly disassociated from him, issuing a statement that they had been unaware of his plans and were disgusted by his actions against his own sister. Music venues across Los Angeles blacklisted him, with several owners stating they would never book any act associated with him again. The fundraising platform permanently banned Jake and required him to return all donations received under false pretenses. Several donors filed additional fraud complaints when they learned the truth. Natalie's emerging influencer career collapsed entirely. Her remaining sponsors pulled out, citing ethical concerns and brand safety issues. Her attempt to rebrand as a beauty influencer failed when other creators made videos warning their followers about her history of manipulation and staged content. Her subscriber count dropped below where it had been before the incident, with many former supporters expressing disgust at being manipulated. The financial impact hit them hard. Unable to earn money in the industries where they'd sought fame, both struggled to find employment elsewhere with their now public legal troubles. Jake's music equipment was seized and sold to pay toward the restitution order. Natalie was forced to sell her expensive camera gear for the same reason. They were evicted from their shared apartment when they couldn't make rent. My parents, who had initially believed their false narrative, finally realized the truth when presented with the unedited footage and court evidence. Their apology came too late to repair our relationship fully, but their withdrawal of financial support from Jake and Natalie showed they had at least accepted reality. Meanwhile, my professional recovery began sooner than I expected. When the full story and court judgments became public, the industry response was overwhelmingly supportive. The major artist who had canceled our project reached out personally. "I'm sorry I reacted to the controversy without getting your side. I'd like to reschedule our sessions when you're ready." Several music publications ran features on the case, highlighting the growing problem of fabricated revenge content and its real-world damage. I gave one carefully considered interview focusing not on vilifying my siblings, but on the broader issues of social media manipulation and the pressure to create increasingly extreme content. Most unexpectedly, a crowdfunding campaign started by session musicians I had worked with raised over $60,000 to help me begin rebuilding. The campaign page was filled with testimonials from artists I had helped over the years, sharing stories of my integrity and generosity that directly contradicted the false narrative my siblings had created. As Jake began serving his prison sentence, and Natalie struggled with the collapse of her social media dreams, I felt no joy in their downfall, only a profound sadness for what could have been, and a determination to rebuild something stronger from the ruins they had created. 1 year after the destruction, I stood in my new studio space, listening to the perfect acoustics as a vocalist recorded the final take for what would become my first Grammy-nominated production. The studio wasn't in my home anymore. I had learned that lesson about separating personal and professional spaces. Instead, I had leased the top floor of a small commercial building in a different part of Los Angeles, converting it into a state-of-the-art facility that reflected everything I had learned through loss. The physical rebuilding had been challenging but cathartic. I had approached the design differently this time, working with an architect to create something that wasn't just a replica of what I'd lost, but an evolution of it. The new space featured multiple isolation rooms instead of one main recording area, allowing for greater flexibility and the ability to host several smaller sessions simultaneously. The security system was comprehensive. Key card access, motion sensors, cloud-connected cameras, and remote monitoring. No one could access the space without my explicit authorization logged and timestamped. My equipment was insured under a policy that specifically covered family-related incidents with all serial numbers and valuations meticulously documented. My approach to data management had transformed completely. Every project was now backed up in real time to 3 separate cloud services. Physical backups were stored in a bank safety deposit box rotated weekly. Nothing irreplaceable existed in only one location. The emotional rebuilding had been far more difficult than the physical reconstruction. For months after the incident, I would wake up in panic, reliving the moment of walking into the destruction. The physical injuries from Jake's punch healed, but the psychological wound of such profound betrayal lingered. 3 months after the court case concluded, I finally started therapy with Dr. Marissa Chen, who specialized in family trauma and betrayal. Our weekly sessions became a cornerstone of my recovery. "What you experienced wasn't just property damage," she explained in one pivotal session. "It was an attempt to destroy your identity, your security, and your future by the people who should have protected those things most fiercely. That's a profound violation of the natural order of relationships." Through therapy, I learned to process my grief, not just for the lost studio, but for the lost relationships. I had to accept that the siblings I thought I had never truly existed. The people who destroyed my studio were showing me who they really were and perhaps always had been. Dr. Chen helped me establish new boundaries with my entire family. My parents, who had eventually apologized for initially believing Jake and Natalie, were allowed limited contact but no involvement in my business or creative life. I declined their invitation to holiday gatherings, choosing instead to celebrate with the friends who had stood by me. Family isn't just blood, Dr. Chen reminded me. It's behavior. It's support. It's love that builds rather than destroys. You have the right to create a chosen family that truly deserves you. That chosen family had emerged powerfully during my darkest moments. Marcus, the drummer who had warned me about Jake's threats, became one of my closest confidants. Carol, the neighbor who had called the police and testified on my behalf regularly, brought home-cooked meals during the months when I could barely function. Session musicians I had treated fairly over the years showed up with equipment loans, referrals, and unwavering support. The professional transformation that emerged from the ashes of betrayal surprised even me. As I gradually returned to producing, I found myself drawn to mentoring emerging artists who reminded me of my younger self, talented but without connections or resources. I started a small nonprofit foundation that provided studio time and production guidance to musicians who couldn't afford market rates. My contracts evolved to include clearer terms about creative ownership and credit, protecting both myself and the artists I worked with. I became known for transparency in an industry often shrouded in vague agreements and handshake deals. Artists sought me out not just for my technical abilities, but for my ethical approach to production. The music itself changed, too. There was a depth and emotional resonance to my productions that hadn't been there before. Artists commented that I seemed to understand their more vulnerable material with uncanny insight. "You really get what I'm trying to express about betrayal in this song," one songwriter told me, not knowing my personal history. "It sounds exactly how that feeling feels." News about Jake and Natalie reached me occasionally through mutual acquaintances. Jake served 14 months of his 18-month sentence before being released on good behavior. He had apparently joined a prison music program and was teaching basic guitar to other inmates. Upon release, he moved to Arizona, unable to rebuild any semblance of a music career in Los Angeles. Natalie had tried repeatedly to rebrand her social media presence, each attempt failing when her history resurfaced. She eventually enrolled in community college, studying marketing, and found work managing social media for a small retail chain, using her skills, but without the personal spotlight she had craved. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, only a quiet hope that they too were learning and growing from the experience. I had not spoken directly to either of them since the court proceedings and had no plans to re-establish contact. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. 2 years after the incident, I received my first Grammy nomination for Producer of the Year. The recognition was validating, but what meant more was the message I received from a young female producer who had interned with me during the rebuilding. "You showed me that we can survive our worst moments and create something beautiful from them that's worth more than any award." Looking around my thriving new studio, I realized the deepest lesson from this painful chapter. Success does indeed trigger insecurity in others, sometimes even those closest to us. But the true measure of success isn't awards or equipment or even creative output. It's the resilience to continue creating despite devastation. It's the wisdom to protect your work without becoming bitter. It's the courage to remain open to authentic connections even after betrayal. I placed my hands on the brand new console, feeling the cool metal under my fingertips and prepared to start the day's session. The studio was just a space, the equipment just tools. The real instrument was my experience, my perspective, my heart, all of which had been strengthened rather than destroyed by what I had endured. The red light above the door illuminated, signaling the beginning of a new recording session, a new creation, a new chapter. If you've made it to the end of my story, I'd love to know what resonated with you most. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild afterward? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of 21st resilience and rebuilding. Thank you for listening to my journey. May your own creative paths be protected and your trust placed in those who truly deserve it.